The theme for tonight's meal is cheap and craveable. This powerhouse of a one-pot meal will feed 6 people for just under $4 a serving, and we're taking inspiration from pizza. What could be better? This one is packed with vegetables. You can add even more if you want to pump up the volume and pump up the value. I hope you'll stick with me. Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. Happy to have you here. Tonight is pizza night, but not the kind of pizza that you're thinking. We're making a one-pot pizza bake that is packed with vegetables, has some traditional pizza flavors, is ultimately customizable. Whatever you like on your pizza, you can put in this pizza bake, and it comes together really quickly and all in one pot. So very few dishes, lots of servings, packed with veggies, super craveable. Your family will be asking for this one on repeat. It's really quite easy, and you can customize the veggies however you like. So if there's something you see here that's not your speed, leave it out and try something else. My goal at this time of the year is to use up what's coming out of my garden. So of course in this one we've got to have some zucchini, and then I'm adding a little bit of this leafy green chard because it's coming out of my garden and I have to use it. The method here is really simple, and you don't even need any special tools. All we're going to do is do some chopping, boil our pasta, mix everything together, and then top with cheese. You do need a large vessel in which to cook this one pot meal. This one is totally on the stove top, though if you want to get your cheese bubbly and brown at the end, you can toss it under the broiler. I don't have time for that today, and it's also like 90 degrees outside. So stovetop for me only. So the first thing we're gonna do is get started chopping our vegetables. A lot of this meal is gonna come together over at the stove, but we'll do some prep first. Quick overview of our ingredients. We have the liquid we're going to cook our pasta in, which happens to be, for me, some pasta sauce, some diced tomatoes, and a little bit of water. We've got about 8 ounces of cheese, and then a whole bunch of vegetable toppings. Today I'm gonna use some olives, a red pepper, a medium-sized sweet onion, about half of an absolutely giant zucchini, some mushrooms that were on clearance, some chard from my garden, and then a couple different herbs, parsley and basil. We've got some garlic in the back there, of course, and then pasta and pepperoni. This one is truly customizable, so whatever you like on your pizza, you can toss in this pizza bake. The first thing I'm gonna do actually is get my skillet preheating over kind of a low heat, so I've got some time to chop up some veg with a little bit of oil. I'm using avocado oil, but you can use whatever you'd like. So about 2 tablespoons of oil goes in our pan. 1 medium-sized Walla Walla sweet onion. These onions have seen better days, so I might have to cut some of it out, but I'm a fan of using whatever produce I have, so I've got to cut a couple pieces out of it. I don't throw things away when I've got a little bad spot, especially in a vegetable. I just cut back on it until I'm confident that everything is looking good with that veg. And this one has a little bit more there. So now we're to the point of good-looking onion. So all I'm gonna do is chop up this onion, not even in a very small dice, just like maybe bite-sized pieces, and we're gonna get it sweating down on the stove. So onion goes onto the stove. Next up, bell pepper. Again, just bite-sized pieces. The vegetables that you use here really can be anything. I can't think of a vegetable that wouldn't work in this pizza bake. Mostly, they just meld into the background. So we can use things like zucchini that might feel kind of weird on a pizza, and you won't even know that it's there. It just adds some volume, a little bit of texture, depending on how big you cut it. But this is a great one to hide vegetables in, and I often do that for people that are really particular. I try to see what I can hide into my one-pot meals without them noticing. I've just outed myself, so now they'll know. To cut this giant zucchini, I'm just gonna cut a little bit off the bottom to make a stable base, and then I'm gonna cut it into planks, flip it over, and cut those planks into logs. And then I'm gonna cut those logs into chunks. I am gonna pull out some of the seedy bits. This zucchini went way too far, so just pull a few of those out. They're fine actually in the dish. I've eaten them many a time, but we don't need all of the zucchini, so we'll just pull a few of them out. So I'm cutting these into relatively small pieces. This is not the star of this show, so I just kind of want it to meld into the background. One good tip for when you're cooking a dish like this and I guess I have to credit Rachel Ray for this, because I first heard the term garbage bowl on her television show like 30 years ago, is to have a garbage bowl. So something that you can discard any of the parts of the veggies that you don't want to use right on your bench. So you're not going back and forth between your bench and your garbage can. The other way to do it is just to pull your garbage can out and put it right beside you, but I tend to trip over things that are in my way in the kitchen, moving too quickly. So I like to have a garbage bowl that I just put off to the side, and then all of that goes directly into the compost. So in this bowl, we've got zucchini and a bell pepper cut up. I'm gonna cut up my chard. One of the things about chard is that it's got this stem that's a little bit woody and more of the consistency probably of like an onion or celery. And so it does need to be cooked a little bit. The leafy greens don't need to be cooked as long. So when I work with chard, I tend to kind of cook it in 2 different batches. So I'll cut the bottoms off, there, cut into small pieces, just like a rough dice. And they'll actually get cooked for longer with things like onions and bell pepper and zucchini, kind of similar. And then the leafy tops will go in later, but they'll get wilted in the dish almost at the very end versus getting cooked from the beginning. All I do is bundle them up and then run my knife through those as well. You could use spinach here, you could use kale. Spinach will cook really, really quickly, whereas chard and kale need a little bit more time. Last couple things here. I'm gonna dice up some parsley. And then some basil. This basil has really seen a better day. A lot of it's brown, but it still tastes just fine. It doesn't look as appetizing. So I'd recommend being thoughtful about which basil you're putting on top of your pizza bake, but it will taste just fine. Basil and parsley are optional ingredients, but I love basil on my pizza. So basil on my pizza bake, it is. So the traditional ingredients that I have for this pizza bake that remind you of a pizza are pepperoni, mushrooms, olives, mozzarella cheese. The rest of the veggies are just kind of a bonus. But if you like a pizza that's just a margarita, if you like a pizza that's like a meat lover's pizza, you can really adapt this recipe to whatever kind of pizza you like. But we're at like $25 or $27 for this meal, and it feeds a ton of people, so it's pretty cost effective as it is. Okay, so I'm gonna get cleaned up a little bit and move us over to our stove because everything's gonna come together from here on out on the stovetop. Welcome to my stovetop. So our onions have sweated down nicely. They're getting translucent. So I'm just gonna add the rest of this veg. Zucchini, bell pepper, the bottoms of our chard. The goal here is just to sweat it out. Nothing too crazy. So I'm gonna let this cook for a couple minutes. I'm gonna add some salt and pepper. You can add more oil at this point if you need to, but I find that these veg will release a fair amount of liquid, so we're probably good with the oil we have. So let these come together. I'm also gonna add our mushrooms at this point. These are shiitake mushrooms that were on clearance. That's the only reason I bought them. You can choose whichever mushroom you like. And bump the heat up a little bit. And then I'm just gonna watch this, babysit it, cook it down until the vegetables get soft and translucent. Our veggies have been cooking for about 5 minutes, getting some nice color on the bottom of the pan, and the veggies are translucent. I'm gonna pull this whole mixture and put it in a bowl. You don't have to do this step. You can actually go ahead and cook your pasta with your veggies. I like to taste the vegetables and have a little bit of texture from them, so I don't want them to be completely cooked down to nothing, but you can definitely leave the vegetables in and cook your pasta right with them. Okay, veggies are out. So I'm gonna add a little bit of water, about a cup of water to start with, and then my tomato products. All we're doing is creating a really flavorful broth for our pasta, these fun little shapes, for our pasta to cook in. 20-ounce can of pasta sauce. You can use pizza sauce, you can use really whatever tomato product you want here. And then this is, I think, a 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes. I'm gonna use about half of this. So reserve that can of diced tomatoes to the side. I may need to add more liquid, but for now, I'm gonna bring this to a boil. And it is risky not wearing an apron around tomato products, but it is a risk we will take together. So the one thing about these one-pot meals, when you're cooking pasta in the one-pot meal, is that you just have to be thoughtful about how much water or liquid you use to cook your pasta. There are 2 options if you have too much or too little. If you have too little, add more. Easy as that. If you have too much, you can either deal with a little bit of a soupy end dish, Or you can just simply use a spoon or a cup and pull some of the liquid out. It's really not the end of the world. There's so much flavor in here already that if you don't get the ratios completely perfect and your pasta is done but it's still a little bit soupy, just remove some of that liquid. No big deal at all. You're going to want to use a shortcut pasta here. It just makes more sense for a bake like this. So really whatever shortcut pasta you like. I don't know what these are called. Tell me in the comments below if you do. Little spirals, but they looked kind of fun. From here on out, you're going to want to follow the instructions on your pasta package. This pasta said between 7 and 9 minutes. I find when I'm not using the full several quarts of boiling water that it usually takes a little bit longer for the pasta to cook. It's no problem. Just babysit it until it's done. You don't want it to be completely cooked through and a little bit mushy because it's going to continue cooking as we assemble our pizza bake. But you do want it to be at least al dente before you put everything else in. So our cooking liquid is boiling. I'm going to add our pasta. Stir to combine. And I think I underestimated the amount of liquid that we need, so I'm going to add some more. I'm going to add some water. Okay, that feels better to me. Our pasta can be submerged in the water. One other quick thing, there was a fair amount of pasta sauce left in the bottom of my jar. Combined it with some water. I'm just going to add it back into our pasta mix. We're just going to babysit this until the pasta is done. Pasta has been cooking for a couple minutes. Just going to give it a stir. It's looking really good. You do want to stir it several times to make sure the pasta doesn't stick to itself or to the bottom of your pan. Definitely not done yet. So lid back on and let her rip. And I do believe our pasta is cooked. Okay, so I'm gonna bring my heat down and I'm just gonna start combining. First thing, this chard, it does need to cook a little bit. It's gonna wilt down and cook a little bit in this sauce. So the chard goes in, veg goes back in. Stir that through. A little bit of garlic, and by a little bit, I mean a lot bit. Heaping tablespoon of garlic. You can put the garlic in earlier if you want. If we put it in the beginning, I worry about it burning. If we put it in the middle, I worry about it losing its flavor when we boil it down with the pasta. So I just put it in toward the end. I'm gonna put a fair amount of our parsley in, reserving some to sprinkle on the top. And a fair amount of our basil goes in. And then, last but not least, pepperoni. So this is a combo turkey pepperoni and pork pepperoni. It is a ton of pepperoni. You can chop this if you want. I kind of like the way the whole pepperonis look. I'm gonna reserve a couple of those for on top. So the reason you don't want to take your pasta too far is because we're doing a whole bunch of stirring and you don't want your pasta to completely break up. So the chard is wilted down nicely. Everything is cooked through. Olives really don't need to cook, so I add them right at the end, and I'm gonna kill the heat. Gonna taste this for seasoning. Salt and pepper. And now our cheese. So I'm going to mix a little bit of cheese into the pasta bake. So I'm going to do one final stir, and the rest of this is going on top. You can see all those cheese strands. Perfect. Perfect. So I'm just going to toss a couple pepperoni on top. That is plenty of pepperoni. And then the rest of the cheese. Our lid goes on. We let that cheese melt. And it is time to taste. It looks so decadent, but there's so many veggies packed into this one little pizza bake. Top with a little bit of parsley. A little bit of basil. Now my favorite part, we get to taste. Nice little cheese pull. So if I did my job correctly, my craving for pizza will disappear after this. I really try hard to make the food that comes out of my kitchen delicious. And I try especially hard to make the food that goes into my videos delicious. But there's something about a one-pot meal that's really affordable, really easy, not very many dishes, that just is special every time. This one in particular, I think will be a crowd pleaser. You can really tailor this to your own individual tastes and let a pizza menu be your guide. This really can handle anything that you could put on a pizza. I'm really happy with this version though, with mushrooms, olives, pepperoni, tomato, basil, and a ton of vegetables. We even used chard, like a deep leafy green, in a pizza bake, and you can't taste it at all. In fact, I would assume people would think that it's basil. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend some of your day with me. Please let me know if you give this one a try and if your family enjoys it and how you change the recipe to be your own personal pizza preferences. That was a mouthful. If you liked this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more from me, one-pot meals or otherwise, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll look forward to seeing you here next time. Cheers.